Welcome to my podcast, All Things Agriculture. I'm your host, Eric Carey, and thank you for tuning in. On this podcast, get to know those who work in agriculture on a daily basis. Find out what they do, the challenges and opportunities they face, and what they think the future holds for agriculture. You'll also have a chance to hear what they do for fun when they aren't working hard to feed the world. If you're watching on YouTube, please consider subscribing to my channel and leaving a thumbs up and a comment below. If you prefer the audio version, you can listen for free on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. And if you'd like to get in contact with me, please email me at allthingsagr@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the episode. Hi everyone, welcome back to All Things Agriculture Podcast. I'm your host Eric. Thanks for joining us, and today I'm delighted to have Jason Henry, Jason, how's it going, bud?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you. It's been a long while.
Almost 6 years, hard to believe.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think, we saw each other at a Farm Bureau back in Albany. You might have still been in college, though.
No, I wasn't. I was out of college. Probably a few years ago, though. Connor and I were there, my cousin.
Yeah, I remember Kelder and I met up with Kelder with your cousin at the bar. And you, so surprising, right?
Made it a little easier to see some familiar faces there. Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, just to, I guess, roll right into it. You're a greenhouse. I mean, I guess you go ahead.
Yep. So I'm fourth generation back on my family's wholesale greenhouse operation. So our bread and butter is the wholesale greenhouses. Today we're running just over 80,000 square feet of greenhouses. And we're also a wholesale vegetable farm, and we do wholesale poinsettia plants in the wintertime. And our newest venture today is hydroponic greens, lettuce. So that's what we're experimenting with right now. But I'm super psyched to be here. Your podcast has become part of my weekly ritual, and I love what you're doing here. And I'll tell you what, it's right up there with Yellowstone. When Yellowstone streams on television, I am absolutely psyched to wait for the next episode, and that's what you're doing here today. Every week in the greenhouses, I'm waiting for that next episode to get posted, and absolutely thrilled to watch them. So I'm happy to be here.
I'm very flattered. Thank you, Jason. So you got the little alert on YouTube that pops up when it says a new episode going, right?
Yes, sir.
No, I really appreciate it. I never know the feedback I get back. Like you sent me a message, saying, hey, I've been watching it. I really appreciate stuff like that. It gives me an idea of who's listening. So thank you.
You're welcome. No worries.
So yeah, I guess the background of your farm, you're what generation again?
So I'm fourth generation of my family to be back there farming today. What the farm started as was a wholesale vegetable farm, field production veggies, hand harvest, your bell peppers, your cucumbers, your zucchini, lettuce, cabbage, cauli, that sort of thing. And it would have been my grandfather that slowly transitioned it into greenhouses. And he got the ball rolling on the greenhouse end of things. And over the years, the wholesale greenhouse end of things has become the bread and butter of the operation. So 95% of the business today is greenhouses. We're still doing a little bit of field production vegetables, trying to get away from it because of inputs, labor especially, going up. It's very hard to make hand harvest vegetables cash flow today. And you know all about that with the dairy industry. Yeah, so, we're trying to be creative, finding new ideas, new crops to put on our acres that can potentially be a little more profitable.
So the breakdown, it's the if you were to look at acreage of greenhouse versus actual just.
So the farm itself sits on about 70 acres. The greenhouses, like I said, we have just about over 80,000 square feet of greenhouse. So it's roughly 2 acres of greenhouse space. So we have 10 individual structures, ranging from we have one structure that's left over from the 1970s. It's a Cornell house, we call it. It's a Cornell design. The entire farm used to be these Cornell houses, and through the years we've slowly been updating. So there's one left at this time, and we have plans to take it down in the near future. And then we have some freestanding greenhouses. They're usually 30 feet wide by 150 feet long. And then what you usually see being built today are called gutter connect greenhouses. They're several bays wide. So when I say a bay is usually roughly 21 feet wide, and then they're attached at the gutter. So our greenhouses today are usually 3 or 4 bays wide by about 156 feet long. So, for example, the newest greenhouse we just built a few years back is roughly 80 feet wide by 156 feet long. So it's just over 15,000 square feet of space.
Wow. That's really, for the greenhouse business, it's square footage, right?
Square footage. Money is space is money. Sorry.
Yeah.
So and the older greenhouses, I guess I'll get into a little bit of greenhouse design. The older greenhouses were, very small, very short, maybe 10, 12 feet high, where today's greenhouses, when you build them, you want to build them a little higher. The higher your greenhouse is, the more efficiently it'll shed heat, the cooler you can keep your greenhouse crop. So today we're building our greenhouses 14 foot to the gutter, and then they get higher from that when you go to the peak. So
okay,
14 foot's usually our minimum. That allows us to shed heat very, very efficiently and keep our crop down at the ground level cool in the hot spring and summer days.
Yeah, how hot can those things get when the sun is blazing?
Even today, for example, it was 32 degrees and sunny. The heat doesn't have to be on in the greenhouse. It'll be up to 80, 90 degrees in the greenhouse just with the natural sunlight coming in.
Wow.
So they heat up in a hurry, and that's why we need to make sure we can ventilate the greenhouses. So today, most of our greenhouses are naturally ventilated. So at the peak, there's a vent, and that vent will open roughly 4 foot right there at the peak to shed the heat out of the greenhouse there. It's the most efficient way to shed heat right there at the peak. Heat rises, so it's all building up in the top of the greenhouse there. So when the computer calls for ventilation, that peak will open up, the heat will vent out, and we'll get that greenhouse temperature back down to where it needs to be. So it's all computer controlled.
Okay. That and that computer is obviously is it set to keep it within so many degrees?
Yeah, so for example, we'll have the thermostat, set at 68 degrees, and then we'll tell the computer to start venting the greenhouse when it hits maybe 75 degrees. The vents will open up. The greenhouse computer can also tell when it starts to rain. So if a heavy rain starts coming down and the vents are open, that heavy rain could affect your greenhouse crop. It could come down onto your greenhouse crop and effectively ruin it. So the computer will tell the vent to close down in a hurry to keep the rain from coming in the greenhouse. So the onboard systems in the greenhouse are very intelligent, and they help us run the operation.
So before way back when it would be
manual.
That'd be your great grandfather,
Right?
And he was the one who transitioned.
My grandfather.
Your grandfather transitioned. Okay,
Kenny.
And so when he first did them, it was all temperature. Yeah,
you had to be there every day.
Yeah.
Making your rounds, going in all the greenhouses, turning on. It would have been probably exhaust fans, big exhaust fans that would pull fresh air into the greenhouse to cool it down. Where today we're trying to get away from those energy eaters and use the natural ventilation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of a lot of ways it's like building a barn for cows.
Yeah.
High
absolutely.
sidewalls, natural ventilation, open peak.
Yeah. And you'll see 2 different designs. Really, you can use a double poly system where you have your steel frame, and then you cover your greenhouse with 2 layers of plastic. We call it poly. And then you inflate that poly essentially like a balloon. So there's 10 inches of air in between that poly layers, and that acts as your insulation. So that helps keep your greenhouse warm in the winter. And then the other option, arguably a better growing environment, is glass greenhouses. Much more expensive to build, but better light penetration for your greenhouse crop. So you'll see a lot of growers go that route as well. We do have one glass structure. A lot of maintenance when your glass panels break. So our glass house, the panels are roughly 6 feet wide by 10 feet long. So we usually break a panel at least once a year. And when you have to replace a panel, it's an absolute bear. So high maintenance, but a nice growing environment, very expensive. So what we're usually running today are the poly structures, double layer poly, and the poly's rated for about 5 to 6 years. So every 5 to 6 years, you got to switch out the poly, which is a job, but it's manageable.
Yeah. Kind of, there's no perfect. Even in the perfect environment you can create in a greenhouse, the greenhouse is still
needs maintenance.
Yeah. What about like storm wise? Are they pretty well immune to most storms, wind, and all that?
So our biggest worry today is snow load. The Snowvember storm, you remember that came through back in 2014, I believe, and a lot of Eden Valley, where I'm from, is greenhouse production. So a lot of growers in Eden Valley lost structures in that storm. We had 7 feet of snow in 3 days, and a lot of the structures just couldn't handle it. Ourselves personally, we didn't lose any structures. My father was quick to the game. He turned on the heat in all of the greenhouses to shed the snow, and was able to save all of our structures. So that's our main concern today when building is snow load capacity. And our newest designs, the trusses are every 4 feet, so they're beefed up. And under the gutter, there's a steel beam for the gutter to rest on. If there's a snow load in the gutter will come down on that steel beam for support. So they're bulletproof when it comes to snow load now, and that's what we're worried about.
Yeah, that's. Do you have to cranking the heat up? Could you possibly damage the plants, or are you just kind of like it's worth getting the snow off because we could lose the whole structure?
So at the time of the Snowvember storm, most of our houses were empty.
Okay.
We were doing poinsettias at the time, so poinsettias usually take up 3 or 4 of our 10 structures, and then the rest are empty with the heat off. So obviously the poinsettia houses, the heat was already on, so they were fine in the snow. But the rest of the structures where the heat was off, we got all the heat turned on in those, so they would start shedding the snow rapidly.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of what you're growing when, like if you went different times of the year, what's growing throughout your greenhouses?
Okay. So like I said, our bread and butter is the greenhouse, and our main time of year is the spring. So ornamental floriculture, bedding plants that you see for sale in May for your gardens. We start that season in November. We start bringing in unrooted cuttings, we call them. They're a growing meristem and a couple leaves to begin the growing process. So we bring those unrooted cuttings in. They're coming in from all over the world, Guatemala, Mexico, you name it. We bring them into the farm, and we stick the unrooted cutting in soil media, and we place them on a heated bench. The bench is heated with hot water, and we supply them with a constant mist to keep the unrooted cutting moist, and that'll encourage germination of the unrooted cutting. So we usually keep the bench around 70 degrees to keep the soil warm, and the mist comes on every 20 minutes for 8 seconds. And after a week, 10 days has gone by, you'll have a rooted cutting that we can then transplant up into larger pots or hanging baskets, you name it. So that's one of the ways we bring plant material in. Another way is starting from seed. Obviously, we start a lot of our plant material from seed. And we have a mechanized seeder to do so. It's a robot on the farm. We can seed a tray of 500 plants in roughly 30 seconds, so it shoots them right through.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool little machine. It's a vacuum seeder is what it's called. And you have to be there next to it assisting it, but it's doing the bulk of the work for you, where if you were to manually seed 500 seeds in a tray, it would take you well over 10 minutes. So it's saving a lot of time.
Wow, that's incredible.
And so start from seed, start from unrooted cuttings, and then we also buy in rooted cuttings, which is more expensive, but depending on the plant variety or what time of year it is in the spring, we may buy in rooted cuttings. So in November, we would be seeding, we would be sticking unrooted cuttings, and then this time of year, we'd be bringing in rooted cuttings for plant material. So a few different ways to get your plant material started. So the season begins in November, like I said, and then February, March, it really starts ramping up, and March, April, May, we're absolute hell week. It's very busy. It's my folks and I on the farm primarily, and in the spring we bring in about 15 seasonal employees to help us around the greenhouses and pack orders and get them out the door. And we ship all our own product throughout the western part of the state, northern Pennsylvania. And we're just trying to beautify Western New York with some color after our dreary winters, you know. So that's our main goal. We supply a lot of breweries, a lot of retail centers. Holiday Valley Ski Resort is one of our top clients. So yeah.
So it's so a lot of your product, your plants end up staying local. Then it's not like they're going, and they aren't going. It sounds like they aren't going to like a Home Depot or a Walmart. They're going to
we primarily small retail centers. Garden clubs are a huge client of ours. A lot of garden club sales, and then like I said, the breweries are coming on strong. A lot of breweries popping up in the area, and so we do a 3-hour radius for shipping, so that keeps us in the western part of the state and Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Last year, the COVID, did that screw a lot of stuff up, or?
We were very concerned about how the season would go, but the season did end up going very well. We were lucky. Sales stayed strong all the way through. Price stayed up, so we came out of it very well. Very fortunate.
It's good to hear. Yeah, I didn't know if people were staying home, they said, "Oh, I'll do more gardening, or I'll do more."
And that's exactly what happened.
What happened.
People were home. They wanted to garden. It was one of the things they could do, and it helped sales out very much so.
Yeah, even though the businesses might not have been open, but
right.
They could still. That's good to hear. Was that a pretty, in terms of greenhouse, was that pretty common? Where a lot of like you said, your area's a lot of greenhouse. Was everyone doing pretty well for them?
Yeah, everyone did well. They had a good spring. Cousins of mine, they do Easter plants. So that was earlier in the spring, obviously, and it wasn't a good season for Easter plants because, most of your Easter plant sales are for churches, and churches obviously weren't in session, so
yeah.
It very much hurt their sales. But fortunately, the spring ornamental crops was strong, so they were able to rebound and come back from that.
So when the spring flush, I guess I'll call it that, is past, is summertime, are you doing, what's the protocol in the summer for growing stuff?
The ornamental bedding plant season takes us from November through June. We've shipped all of our product out in May and cleaned up by mid-June. And that is usually when we're trying to transplant all of our vegetable plants into the fields. We're huge into bell peppers and summer squash and tomatoes, and we do everything on raised mulch and drip tape, so it's all drip irrigation. Very, very efficient way of irrigating. So we go into the fields, we moldboard plow, we disc, we drag, and then we have a mulch layer machine that simultaneously rolls out the black mulch plastic with our drip irrigation tape. So we keep everything on raised beds to help with rainwater. It sheds the rainwater very well into the valleys rather than where the plants are. And then the drip tape just makes for the most efficient way of watering our plants rather than overhead irrigation. So we're able to set everything up on drip tape, and with the turn of a valve, we're watering the entire farm, and off we go.
Since you have so much roof space, do you catch rainwater at
No,
all?
we've thought about it, but haven't gotten there yet. No.
This is kind of off on a little tangent, but when you were at Cornell, I think if I remember right, didn't you internship in North Carolina and work for a greenhouse place?
I did.
Didn't they have so much roofing they collected all the rainwater?
Yeah, all of their... Okay, so...
Maybe you want to get into that later, or go ahead if you want.
We can get into it now. I interned for Metrolina. It's in North Carolina, like you said, in Huntersville. And they're the largest greenhouse company in the U.S. And when we're talking acreage, it's one greenhouse, one structure, and today it's well over 250 acres. So it's one structure. Once you're in the facility, you never have to leave. You never have to step foot outside. And it's unbelievable. It's set in a valley, so when you pull up to it, it almost looks like a pond because the structure's all glass. So you'd swear it's a pond when you're rolling up on it. And the street it's on, it's a 45-mile-an-hour street. And when you're coming up to the greenhouse and passing it, it takes you over 2 minutes to pass the facility at 50 miles an hour. So you can picture driving at 50 miles an hour past this greenhouse, and you're looking at it for 2 minutes out the window until you're past it.
And it's one building. How do they add on to it?
So greenhouses are designed with bays. So when you want to expand, you can just basically tear down the side of the greenhouse and keep connecting bays to the greenhouse. Wild operation. So first order of business when I got there was picking out a beach cruiser bicycle to get around on. Everyone's riding around on beach cruisers. It's all concrete, so it's pretty sweet living. And just amazing facility. 3 shifts, 24 hours a day. They're doing wholesale ornamental plants as well for sale in the spring. But who they're supplying is Walmart, East Coast. So you'll see their trucks going up and down East Coast supplying the Walmart superstores. Great experience, cutting edge technology. They're the leaders in greenhouse design and technology. So it was great to see everything they had and work with everything they had. But it certainly made me appreciate the small mom and pop operation, that I grew up in, and it gave me the want and need to maintain what we have and keep it going for future generations. But amazing experience down there. They took it to a whole new level. Everything was automated, mechanized. As soon as the pot or hanging basket was planted, it was placed on a bench, and it wouldn't be touched by a human hand until it was being shipped out the door. So very, very efficient place.
Automation to a T.
Yes. And when I say bays of a greenhouse, usually 20, 21 feet wide, their bays were a little wider, around 30 feet wide. And for every bay of their greenhouse, they would have a crane in the bay that it was basically a metal truss framework that would span the bay. And they called them cranes. They were each equipped with a diesel engine. And these cranes would go up and down the bays and grab tables of flowers that would be on the floor of the bay and transport the flowers around the greenhouse. It was just absolutely mind-blowing to witness. And they would even utilize these cranes for spraying pesticides, herbicides, whatever needed to be done. And it wasn't even so much spraying anymore. They were bringing crop dusting into the greenhouse. If you can think of an airplane out west crop dusting a cornfield, that's basically what they were doing in this greenhouse. This crane would grab their sprayer unit and transport it up and down the bay, and they would essentially crop dust their floral crop. So it was a very effective way of spraying. They could get it done in a timely fashion. So pretty cool.
Wow. Mm-hmm. I can't even think. 250 acres.
250 acres under glass. Yep.
That is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Absolutely unreal. Mm-hmm.
Boy, you have 2 acres, right?
2 acres.
That's a lot to manage, right?
For my dad and I, it's plenty.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Holy. Wow.
And we have every hope and intention to expand, but within reason.
Yeah.
We always want to be progressive, but maintain that mom and pop essence of the farm, and be able to have our family out on the farm and raise our kids out on the farm. And I want the same for my kiddos growing up as I had growing up.
Yeah. So are they just going to keep going with it, you think? Is there enough room where they are to just...
They can expand. Yep.
They can keep... They just have to buy up the... Or they own the land?
Because they were roughly 200 acres when I was there. Would have been 7 years ago. And today, 7 years ago, they're already over 250 acres. So they've already added 50 acres plus.
So they're open almost 10 acres a year then, sort of, if you go.
But they're adding blocks of 50 acres, yeah.
Jeez. Wow. Well, to supply Walmart, you need a lot of area.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's incredible. But yeah, kind of back to the water though. They have so much.
Yes, so there's
roofage.
so much watershed off the greenhouses that they're bringing it all back to a collection pond and actually using this rainwater for irrigation in the greenhouse. So it's pumped through filters and it's sanitized, and it's then utilized as their irrigation water. So it's very efficient recycling system. Takes a lot of money to get it set up though. It's very cool.
You were saying how you and your dad thought about doing it. What's the... Is it just it's a big investment, or it's just it's easy, you just collect and put in, it's not as easy as it sounds?
Big investment, and we got to find the time to do it too.
Yeah.
It's be something we'd have to do in the summer months when we're a little slower, when we're usually building a greenhouse or maintaining our greenhouses. So certainly something to think about though.
Yeah. I guess water, at least in this part of the country, isn't usually an issue. This last year was kind of an anomaly, but
right. So something to think about.
Yeah.
Certainly.
So what else in terms of down the road? Do you have any plans for the greenhouse or the farm, or what are your thoughts? Well,
so like I said, the farm started as a vegetable production, wholesale vegetable production farm, and today with labor and inputs constantly going up, it's so hard to cash flow our vegetables. So we're constantly looking for new ideas, new crops to put on our acreage outside, rather than our vegetables. So 2 years ago, 2019, everyone probably knows the Farm Bill passed the CBD hemp in the state. So we were willing to take a gamble and dip our toes in it, and we decided to apply for our license to grow CBD hemp. And we were granted the license, much to my disbelief, because our farm actually backs up right to a development. So there's plenty of houses right near our farm. And I know they take that into consideration when handing out the licenses, because, everyday goers coming onto your farm or, getting exposed to the hemp. But we were accepted. So we decided to go forward with planting our vegetable production acreage with CBD hemp. So it was a debacle. I can certainly get into it. We decided to plant 4 acres of hemp just to be safe. We knew we were potentially throwing the money away. We didn't know if it was going to be successful or not, but we had to try. So when growing hemp for CBD, you had 2 options. You could either grow what they called an autoflower variety, which is a 75-day crop, no matter what the sun's doing. The day you seed it, it needs 75 days to finish out, and it's ready to go. Whether it's raining, whether it's sunny, cold, hot, doesn't matter. And then your other option is a full season hemp plant, which you plant in June, and it would take you all the way through fall, late fall, October, November you'd be harvesting. And these full season hemp plants are much larger. They're essentially the size of a Christmas tree. So they need to be spaced out much farther, 5-6 foot spacing, versus this autoflower variety, the 75-day crop, it gets roughly 3 feet tall. So they only require a 2-foot spacing. So you can fit many more of this autoflower variety in the 4 acres than you can the full season variety. So the autoflower variety was most appealing to us in that we'd be off of it in 75 days. We wouldn't have to worry about it all the way through fall. And we knew we could fit more in the acreage and possibly get more flower off of the acreage. So we went forward with the autoflower. So we decided to get feminized seed. So it was guaranteed to be all female seed coming from the seed supplier. Again, you have 2 options when buying seed. You can buy feminized, all females, or you can buy unfeminized seed, which is a 50-50 mix of male, female. When growing hemp, you want all female seed. You want all ladies in the field, much like your dairy. So buying feminized seed while you're getting all female seed, it's very expensive to make that guarantee. So you're paying for that convenience.
Yeah.
So we were paying roughly $1.50 per seed, which was astronomical to us. We're used to buying thousands of vegetable seeds for $10, where for every hemp seed we brought in, we were paying $1.50. So we planted roughly 10,000 hemp plants in our fields out back. So you can imagine the seed cost up front was pretty hefty. And then for the guys that plant unfeminized, much cheaper. You're talking 30, 40, 50 cents per seed. But if you're going out planting 4 acres, you can pretty much guarantee that 2 acres of what you plant is going to be useless. They're going to be all males, and you'll have to get into the field and pull the males.
Why would they even give you that option?
Save cost.
Okay.
Up front, it's much cheaper.
But the back
and that's appealing to many people, is saving that seed cost. But you ultimately end up paying for it on the back end when you have your guys out in the field searching for male plants, pulling them out, load them up on your wagon, tractor, gator, whatever you have, and they have to be burned. So your labor bill is going to go skyrocket.
So it's really it's nice up front, but in the end, it's not
Correct.
Savings.
Right, not at all. You're gonna pay for it.
Yeah.
So the reason they want all females is obviously because the female plant is producing the iconic bud, and the bud is what we want for the CBD oil. And the male plants produce pollen. So they don't want the male plants in the field, because if the pollen's released, it's going to fertilize the females, and it's then going to send the females into seed production. So rather than producing the flower, they're going to produce seed. Okay, so it ultimately ruins your CBD crop. So even with the feminized seed, they still had a disclaimer that 1 in every 2,000 seeds would be a male. So we had to go into it knowing that we could ultimately find some male plants. So every other day we would walk the fields scouting for male plants, and we did find 5 male plants out of the 10,000 plants we had. So you have to make sure to get these male plants out of the field before they release their pollen and pollinate your females. Because if they pollinate your females, they're going to go to seed production rather than your bud and ruin your crop.
Game over.
Mm-hmm. So, and the hemp ultimately, it fit into our production very well because we were able to plant it on our raised mulch beds with our drip irrigation. So we had all the equipment sitting on the farm ready to go. The investment wasn't crazy to get into hemp. So it made sense for us. And we put the entire plot in a 6-foot electric fence. We were worried about especially deer getting into the plot. Deer do like to feed on hemp plants, and then we weren't sure how the community would take to it either, if they would try to get in, or theft is definitely an issue in the CBD hemp market. So we were trying to prevent any issue.
They probably don't anticipate they're stealing hemp, I would imagine. That's not their end game.
Not at all, but I'm sure they thought they were getting high, so that's totally fine.
Because it smells, there's quite an odor, isn't it?
Looking at a CBD hemp plant, you would not be able to tell the difference between the hemp and a marijuana plant.
Okay.
They look virtually identical, and especially in the evening, they reek of reefer. So my wife would find it hilarious. We'd pull up to the farm, just in the vicinity of the farm, and it would reek of skunk. So pretty funny. And pretty much all of Eden Valley was into CBD hemp production. So It was just everywhere. There was hundreds of acres of CBD hemp in the valley. So it was different. The community was very interested to see what was going on. And then, so we had it in the 6-foot electric fence, and then we took a page out of the movies and planted a cornfield around the entire plot as well. So it was smack dab in the middle of a cornfield. So hard to find, but very effective. So we were scouting for males, making sure to get the males out of the crop. It was a 75-day crop, like I said. So we planted it in June, and it was ready to harvest mid-August. We got in there with our equipment. It's harvested by hand, basically clippers. You come out covered in black oil, sticky black oil.
So when you're clipping, you're just clipping the
clipping
buds?
Nope, you're clipping the stalk of the plant right at the soil level.
Okay.
So you're taking the entire plant
Okay.
out of the field. Loaded it into bins and straight off to our processor for processing. So they would then shuck the stalk of all the buds and send the buds off to processing, whether it be with ethanol extraction or CO2. So our autoflowers, we had a beautiful crop come off our field production, 10,000 plants off to the processor. It was mid-August at the time. Still plenty of growing time in the season, and we had some vacant greenhouses sitting there. So my dad and I got to talking, and we figured, why not go all in and do a greenhouse crop, try to plant hemp in the greenhouse and see how it goes. So we bought in more autoflower seed and seeded it right into 2-gallon pots, 2-gallon plastic containers. We put roughly 7,500 of them in our newest greenhouse, all on trickle drip irrigation. And at this point, much of Eden Valley, some other growers had full season hemp plants going. So they were still about halfway through their growing cycle at this point, to be finished off in the fall. So a lot of unfeminized seed was out there in the valley, and farmers had to be out there pulling the male plants out, obviously, so they didn't release their pollen and pollinate the females. And it's next to impossible to make sure to get all the male plants out. So naturally, some of the male plants started releasing pollen, right? And it only takes one male plant within 20 miles of a female to pollinate it. So if the wind's move in the right direction, it's going to get to your female plant. And the pollen got into our greenhouse, and it pollinated our entire greenhouse crop. So the entire crop was ruined. By November, it was ruined. Yeah. So that investment was straight down the tubes. So it's difficult when you got an unfeminized seed out there. It's difficult to ensure a successful crop.
So I guess the fact that you took your crop off so early, since you had the shorter day compared to the longer day, you're able to get that out before must be the later day crop was the males are mature enough to send their
exactly. Yeah, and that was kind of our takeaway message is the autoflower is definitely a good move because you plant and harvest it before the full seasons have released their pollen. So it's very effective in getting a successful crop off.
Wow.
Yeah. So
how do they work in the greenhouse compared to outdoors? Was there any difference? You think they did better or worse? Or
your goal in the greenhouse is to create a perfect growing environment. So the plants weren't quite as bulky, quite as dense, because when they're out in the elements, in the wind and the rain, they bulk up. They're much more dense. So the biomass was a lot lighter in the greenhouse, but still a nice tall plant heading into the fall until it got pollinated and all of our buds started going to seed pods and yeah, just a lousy day when we saw that happening. So it was no fault of our own. It's just how things ended up going. So,
well, if you guys had that, then I mean the whole valley must have been
pollination issues all over. And out in the fields, now all these females that went to seed, they're going to start dropping the seed, right? So you're going to have volunteers popping up the next season, the next year. So it will be very difficult to get a successful hemp crop off when you're talking all the seed that's been dropped in the valley now. So
okay, yeah. So you almost have to like stop and let it die off, don't you? I mean,
right.
But you can't kill it all. It's always going to be there,
Yeah,
won't it?
I mean, you could kill it off if you were actively scouting for it.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of work. And
how far are those seeds? Are those like wind driven, or are they just basically
no? They're just dropping.
Okay.
Yep, they're just dropping. But yeah, and that wasn't the only issue. The contract that we had with our processor stated that the farmer would be paid when the product was off to market. So our first crop was successful. We got it out of the field. We got it to the processor. The processor did his end of things, got it off to market, and we never got paid. So the money never came in, and that's just another reason why we didn't do it this season. The industry is just so new, and there's so few processors out there that it's just unreliable at this point. And hopefully New York State will grant some more processing licenses so more processors can get into it and maybe make the industry a little more reliable. So
you think there's hope for it going
absolutely.
forward?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because a couple of years ago it was all the rave and you heard about people doing it, but at the same time it was the processing. Who's going to process it?
Right.
That was always the issue. I didn't know anything about the seed.
Not granting any more processing licenses, so until they do that, it's going to be difficult.
Wonder why that is.
I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it was a very fun experience. The hemp, it's different than our vegetables in that it's got a very sensitive taproot. The main root coming off of the plant, they call it the taproot, and extremely sensitive. So usually when we plant a vegetable seed in a tray, we let it grow for a month or so, 30, 40 days to get a nice strong root ball. The transplant will be about 6 inches tall when we put it in the field with our equipment. And we can know that we've got a nice strong transplant out there in the elements that'll take to the conditions. Where the hemp, from the day you seed the hemp plant in the soil media in the greenhouse, they want it transplanted out into the field within 7 days. Because if that taproot senses any sort of resistance, whether it be the bottom of a pot or the bottom of a tray, it's going to stunt the plant. So we were kind of reluctant to believe that, and we didn't want to put the hemp plant out in the field when it was such a young seedling, half inch, 1 inch tall, 5-6 days old. So we experimented with it. We did half the crop. We transplanted half the crop into the field within that 7 days. And then the other half of the crop, we let go 2 weeks, and then we transplanted it into the field at 2 weeks. And just like the seed supplier said, sure enough, the half of the crop that we had waited the 2 weeks on stunted because that taproot sensed some resistance against the pot. So where we should have gotten 3 foot tall plants, we were getting 2 foot tall plants.
Okay.
So a little shorter than they should have been, but still successful in the end as far as creating bud. So
You didn't run into that problem in the greenhouse or is that why you use such large pots?
Exactly. We used a large pot from the get-go, so the plant would have enough space to grow from the start. So it wasn't an issue in the greenhouse. But yeah, when we're transplanting out into the fields, we want a nice, strong transplant. We don't want to have to worry about it when there's a storm coming through or whatnot. So, but sure enough, they're entirely correct in getting that transplant out into the field ASAP within a week.
It's incredible. It's so hardy at such a young age. That
Right.
just boggles my mind.
You get a rainstorm coming through, driving down into the soil, it almost creates a mud layer that crusts over the transplant. So it can cause an issue in that plant being successful. So we're, always worried about that. But we would have been better off getting them all out within that week for sure.
Huh. Mm-hmm. So it was quite a new experience then.
Absolutely.
But you think eventually would you get back into it once it's kind of more developed? It's a more developed industry.
Yeah, if there's more processors around that we can rely on and the industry stabilizes a little bit, yeah, we could certainly think about it. Because field production produce just it's not cash flowing today, and it's much like the dairy industry. You bust ass every day to and it's just hard to make ends meet sometimes, but the farmer's resilient. You knock him down and he gets back up, and he's an eternal optimist. So you just pray that tomorrow's going to be better and you move on. So
sounds like your grandfather had a pretty good vision for transitioning into the greenhouse and getting away from the field crop.
Yeah, the greenhouses have been great. It's our bread and butter. It's what we love to do. It's a very, very nice operation that we enjoy. So
it's got to be nice working in December, January when it's
when it's 10,
out.
20 degrees and snowy. It's 75 and sunny in the greenhouse always. So we love it. We feel bad for the dairy farmers that are out in the cold barns.
Yeah, scraping the frozen shit off the concrete floor. Frozen water. Yeah, I'm sure you have your deal of I guess if something were to break in a greenhouse like during the winter time, that would be disastrous.
Yeah, no good. If you lose heat in the greenhouses when you have a crop in there, it's disastrous. So all of our greenhouses are on forced air, natural gas unit heaters, and there's always several unit heaters in a greenhouse just in case one's to go down. You've got backup. But yeah, always a concern is your heat. That's our main concern when the power goes out. We make sure to have a standby generator on site to keep the heat going and to keep the inflators going that inflate the double layers of poly. We want to make sure those stay inflated because if the power goes out and we lose inflation and the windstorms to come through, it could rip that poly right off the greenhouse structures and expose your crop.
We used to have a greenhouse for the calves. Mm-hmm. My parents built it back in the late 90s. And let's see, I think it's just a 30 by 100 foot, just a single walkway in the middle with calves on each end.
Yep.
And I think we replaced the roof. Oh man, at least twice. It was a double layered, had the fan, and if, like you said, you
just
lose the
like
power,
a greenhouse, then.
the roof would come down, and you get a windstorm, and it ripped. I think once that way in a windstorm, it tore right off, and then one time the actual, the outer layer ripped off completely, and we went a couple months with just
single layer.
The single layer,
expensive to heat.
Yeah, well, you don't heat it or anything.
Heated, yeah.
It's not heated, but it was just really nervous because I can't remember what time of year it was, but you get a wind, and it's just that little thin. It's not the outer layer where it's built to withstand the elements.
Sure.
And, like I said, I think it was by the third tear in the roof. We were just kind of like, all right, this thing's almost 20 years old. I think there's, we can move on. So we end up selling it. We hadn't any issue at selling it. We sold some guy in Rochester, and
the poly,
the whole greenhouse,
structure?
yeah,
no
had
kidding.
Trusses and everything on it, and it was a nice greenhouse. Just it would, moved on to a stick built.
Okay,
but yeah, they were hellish to keep cool in the summer, as you can imagine.
Yeah, they heat up quick.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That was the whole thing.
But yeah, I mean, every year there's maintenance on the poly. We have to get up there and make patches, and we hope to get that 5-6 years out of the poly. But sometimes you don't. If an ice storm comes through and ices over that poly on the greenhouse, and the next thing you know, you have wind that blows sheets of ice to the next greenhouse, you're going to have tears, and you might have to do a replacement earlier than you wanted. So it's always different.
Yeah. I said nothing but the glass ones are like the ones at Cornell. Those are just expensive.
A little more resilient to the weather, yes, but expensive to build, expensive to maintain when you're talking about replacing sheets of glass. But nice growing environment, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I ever told you a story about how Pat Redmond and I had this. We had this dream in college that we would take like a 2,000 cow dairy with a digester, mm-hmm. and we would build. We called it a 100-acre greenhouse. So I don't think that's feasible, especially in New York. You take a large greenhouse, and with that digester would power everything in the greenhouse, heat it, cool it. We'd have air conditioning, the whole works, and we would grow tropical fruits, and we'd sell the tropical produce to restaurants in New York City. You imagine you grow bananas, oranges in upstate New York.
There, yeah. You got to get with Borman and get it going.
Yeah, See, Borman was going to run the digester. We'd run the dairy, the digester, and we'd have this giant greenhouse. I can't imagine the cash it would take to build a greenhouse of that size, though.
It could certainly be done.
Mm-hmm. Just need a few investors.
We can make that happen.
Mm-hmm. So, what other kind of practices you guys are? You were talking about hydroponics and
yeah. So something I want to get into before the hydro is I should talk about our soil operation for the main greenhouse operation, the bedding plants. So our soil media comes in from Canada. It all comes in as a premix compressed bale. The bales usually weigh anywhere from 2,400 to 3,000 pounds, and we call them towers. And so they're about 9 feet tall and 4 feet wide. And we bring these bales, these towers in to the greenhouse, and we have what we call a bale buster. You put this bale into the bale buster, and it has cutting knives that slowly cut apart this bale and send it through a shredder, which after it goes through the shredder, water gets added to make the soil moist. It goes into a conveyor, up the conveyor, and into our flat filler. So our flat filler is a universal machine that can fill anything from an 806 flat, which is a flat, just a tray with packs in it for our ornamental plants, or it can fill 4-inch pots, 3-inch pots, even hanging baskets, big planters. So it's completely universal to fill whatever we need to for the greenhouse operation. Very, very effective. What we did before we had these bales, these premix towers, is we had, if you can picture a cement truck, we had a cement mixer off of one of these trucks in the pole barn, and we would mix our soil with different commodities by hand. So we would basically have a recipe, and we would fill this cement mixer with our soil commodities, and we would mix the soil up, and then reverse turn the soil out of the cement mixer into our conveyor, and that would then go into the flat filler again. But today, now we're using the towers, the bales. It's all premix, good to go. So it saves a ton of time and is much more effective in getting us where we need to be.
Yeah, I'm sure in terms of just the labor and time of filling the thing must be.
So the cement mixer would mix up about 2 yards of soil, and now today each tower or bale is 10 yards of soil. So it's a super labor savings.
Is that pretty common? Is that what most greenhouses use? Is that sort of use these bales?
Yeah, most guys are using bales today, premix bales. There are a few growers that have their own specific mix they would like to see those, so they're still mixing manually just because they have a specific recipe they want to follow. but we're going premix, and it's just better for us as an operation overall. Saves us a lot of time, and it takes care of our spring ornamental plants and even our poinsettia plants for the winter months. So I guess that brings us into poinsettias. Our poinsettias, we grow roughly 15,000 poinsettias every year for the Christmas season. We bring them in July as a rooted cutting, as we talked about before. So they come to the farm and basically a foam cube with roots established, and we transplant those into the finished pots. We do a 4-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch, and 10-inch poinsettia pot. And we fill 4 of our greenhouses with poinsettias. So they grow from July all the way through December 25th. We ship all the poinsettias early December through Christmas Eve, basically. All the churches want the poinsettias the week of Christmas, so we're very, very busy that week of Christmas. This past year with COVID and everything that was going on, it was a rough poinsettia season. Not so many churches in session. We do a lot of fundraisers with poinsettias, so schools were cut back, so not so many fundraisers going on. So it was a rough season poinsettia wise, but we came out of it fine. So there's always next year. We'll try again. But yeah, so that's our poinsettia game.
So 15,000 plants. So that's one greenhouse, you said, or is that both or two?
The 15,000 plants will take up 4 of our structures.
4. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Once we have them spaced out and they're finished spacing. Mm-hmm.
I think poinsettia are very pretty. Very pretty plant.
You do 10 different colors of poinsettias. So red's obviously the fan favorite. We grow the most of our red variety, and then we have anything ranging from white to pink to you name it, marbles, Picassos, just burgundies, any color you can imagine. We grow it.
That's just, you order it in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're ordering this, the plants in, where do those, are they grown in New York, or where are they come from?
They're grown just down the road, actually. Our cousin farm, WD Henry, they grow the poinsettias. They take the cuttings off of their mother plants and establish the unrooted cutting like we talked about earlier. They'll place that unrooted cutting in the foam, we call it Oasis, and they'll establish that root system, and then we'll buy the rooted cutting from WD's and bring it over to our farm and transplant it into the finished pot. Mm-hmm. So
that's convenient.
Local. Yeah, very. It's a quarter mile down the road. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's real easy. Mm-hmm. How about some of the other plants you bring in? Are they local, or do you have to get them from elsewhere?
So the spring season, our main season, like I said, our cuttings could be coming in from all over the world: Guatemala, Mexico, you name it. Any tropical area plants are coming in from, and some plants are coming local as well. We just had a load of plants delivered from Dickman Farms. They're right here in Auburn, so they're local. So yeah, anywhere really that plant stock are coming in from. Mm-hmm.
You don't really think about, unless you, like you said, unless you start it from seed itself, it's just more convenient to buy in the root. Different
plant species, price is a factor. Different species will cost any varying price. So sometimes it's more effective to buy seed versus a rooted cutting, much cheaper. Some varieties are obviously more difficult to grow, so it might be easier to go the rooted cutting route rather than trying to grow it from seed. So you just got to take all those factors into consideration when ordering your plant material. And yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're also talking about some hydroponics you guys do?
Yeah, so our latest experiment, you could say, is hydroponics. So it's filling that void of our wholesale vegetable production out in the field. What can we do that time of year that will be more more profitable, I guess you could say. So I came to my father, and we've got greenhouses sitting vacant from June through December, really. The greenhouses that aren't in poinsettia production. So it'd be nice to put them into use somehow. So we figured, why not give hydroponics a try? So we purchased a NFT system, they call it. It's called Nutrient Film Technique, where 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, there's constantly a small film of water running the bottom of a trough. We call them gullies. So a gully is roughly 4 inches wide by 10 feet long, 2 inches tall. So we currently have 400 of these gullies in one of our greenhouses. So the greenhouse is 5,000 square feet. There's 400 of these gullies in the greenhouse. Each gully holds 15 plants. So that's a total of 6,000 plants that can be in that greenhouse at any given time. And today we have roughly 750 plants coming on per week with that size of an operation. Our goal is to have a fresh crop coming on every week so we can continuously supply our consumers, our clients. So a little bit how the system works. We have a nutrient reservoir. It's a 300-gallon water tank. And at any given time, there's 250 gallons of water in this tank. And then out in the system, there's usually about 100 gallons of water out in the system. So we usually have about 350 gallons of water moving around. The pumps that we use for the system are hot tub pumps. So we've got a pump for either side of the greenhouse, 2 pumps. They're responsible for pumping the water from the nutrient tank out to the gullies. And then the gullies are sloped 3 inches. So it's basically a gravity drain. The water flows from the top end of the gully down to the bottom into a 4-inch PVC pipe. And that 4-inch PVC pipe gravity drains back to the nutrient reservoir. So it's very efficient in that it recycles all of the water. So we've got that 350 gallons of water. The system, the lettuce, the 6,000 plants, they consume roughly 50 gallons per day. So the nutrient reservoir is equipped with a monitor system to detect when the water level drops below 250. When that water level drops below 250 gallon, it'll automatically add water, fresh water, back into the system to maintain that level. So it's very good at keeping an eye on water level. There's a onboard computer that I input our water pH and our water fertilizer content into. So water pH coming off the street, coming out of the hose, is usually around 8.0. And for lettuce, we want our pH to be 5.8. So we use an acid to bring that pH down to 5.8 from 8.0. And then our fertilizers, they call it EC. We want our EC to be anywhere from 1.6 to 2.0. And coming out of the hose, it's roughly 0.0. So virtually no fertilizer in the water coming out of the hose. So we add the fertilizer into the water in the system there. So the computer has basically 3 pumps that correspond with 3 different 55-gallon tanks. And in 2 of the tanks, I have 2 different fertilizers. I have our NPK, our nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus in one tank. I have a calcium in the second tank. And in the third tank, I have that acid. So the computer will automatically pump both the fertilizers and the acid into the nutrient reservoir to bring those levels where I need them to be, the 1.6 and the 5.8. And naturally, when the system adds fresh water into the reservoir, it will dilute the solution. So that's when the computer picks up on it and adds fertilizer and acid back into the system. So it's a very intelligent system, and it takes care of itself. It just needs to be babysat. So I'm in there at least 3-4 times a day to make sure everything's running as it should. And there's many times where it's not running as it should. Tonight, just before I came, I stopped in the greenhouse to make sure everything was running fine, and it wasn't running at all. So I had to basically jump start the pumps and get them going again to get water flowing. But very cool system, very effective. Yeah,
That's cool. Wow.
Hydroponic vegetables, greenhouse vegetables. It accounts for roughly 2% of the world's vegetable production, and it's, in my opinion, certainly the way of the future. It's very efficient. In that 5,000 square feet, in 1 year we can produce 40,000 lettuce plants. That's tons and tons of lettuce, weight-wise. In one small space, that's a tenth of an acre. So where to do that field production would be a much different scenario, acreage-wise.
Yeah. And just the whole, 50 gallons of water or fertilizer is a lot, but still for that many plants and that, it's so efficient how it uses water.
So you're figuring those 6,000 plants
unreal.
in that greenhouse are consuming about 50 gallons of water a day.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that, in the grand scheme of things, that's really not, it's a lot, but it's not.
Versus if you're overhead irrigating 6,000 lettuce plants out in the field on a sunny day, a lot of that water is going to evaporate before it even hits the ground. So it's very efficient in water usage.
You think that's is that the way greenhouses are going? Hydroponics more? Or do you think there's always going to be the traditional, potted, dirt with the...
Yeah, you're always going to have the soil, the potted plants. But hydroponics is certainly new and upcoming and very efficient way of growing. It's a very clean system. There's virtually no soil in the system. People always ask, how do we get the lettuce to root? And what we use is called rock wool. It's a natural substance. We seed the lettuce into rock wool cubes, and that's what gives the lettuce plant structure to root into. So from the day we seed the lettuce into the rock wool, we seed it into a tray. We give the lettuce 14 days in that tray to germinate. And at day 14, the lettuce plant has a root system. It's about an inch tall. And so at that day 14 mark, we'll then transplant it into the hydroponic system in the greenhouse, where they're spaced 8 inches apart. And the water is then flowing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's always on.
Mm-hmm. What variety of lettuce is this?
So we're doing 5 different varieties right now: green leaf, a red leaf, red Boston, your standard Boston, and a romaine.
Okay.
Romaine's been very hot with everything that's been going on related to romaine, E. coli wise. It's very hydroponically, it's very clean. No issues there. So that's been a very hot commodity for restaurants. Fortunately for us, we have a market right across the street. So the market is literally taking anything we're able to produce. So he's taking all 750 heads per week that we're able to grow. And he's got a second location opening up this spring. So he's going to be looking for more.
That's right across the road.
Right across the street. Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's very convenient. Mm-hmm. You sell them other stuff or just lettuce?
Yeah, we sell them ornamental plants in the spring as well. Poinsettia plants in the winter. And this lettuce program is now year round. We're growing lettuce year round in the greenhouse, which presents its challenges because in the summer months in June, July, when it's 80 and sunny outside, it is 100, 110 in the greenhouse. And when you're naturally venting a greenhouse, it can't cool down to that 80 degree mark that the outside is. So it presents a challenge. But as long as the water is flowing on those lettuce plants, they pull through just fine. And then in the winter, obviously when it's cold outside, you're pumping that greenhouse full of heat. So your cost per lettuce plant goes drastically up. But you are able to grow year round.
That probably has more of a value to it if you're able to sell fresh lettuce in
That's
January.
That's the key, is you're able to produce and supply this consistent product year round that the consumer can go to the grocery and count on it being there and it always being there. So
yeah. So how, like, I know a lot of romaine, and like you're saying with the E. coli, you hear about it in Arizona and California. I mean, you know how hot it gets out there. Do they have issues with the heat, 110 degree weather? As you were saying, in the greenhouse, it gets so hot and it can be detrimental. Is that similar out there? Or is it, since it's outside open, it's not
going to be as much of an issue being out in the elements, but heat's it's a factor. So as long as you're keeping them irrigated, they're going to pull through just fine.
okay.
But lettuce is a cool season crop, so it's more of a spring crop and a fall crop rather than a summer crop. So you're not so much going to see lettuce planted outdoors in the peak of summer, but we are able to squeak it through a greenhouse in the summer months.
Just really be watchful.
Keep that water flowing.
Yeah, that's where you don't want it to shut down at all.
If the water's shut down in the summertime at 110 degrees in the greenhouse, they will be obliterated within minutes. So got to keep an eye on it for sure.
Yeah. Ooh.
And we do want to get the greenhouse, the hydroponic greenhouse, to the point technologically that we're able to monitor it on our cell phones, and alarms being sent to our cell phones to let us know if the water goes down, if the heat goes down, if there's any sort of issue over there, to let us know right away, so there's no downtime in getting that fixed.
Oh. I'm sure it won't be long. I'm sure they're out there. You just have to imagine a matter of getting that technology.
It's getting it implemented. Yep. Yeah. And then, as you know, in New York State, we're in one of the darkest regions in the country in the winter months. So light is an issue for the lettuce. So we bring in supplemental lighting, all LED lighting. We bring in and we run the LED lights for 16 hours a day. So they're on from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night. And then they give the lettuce a 8-hour rest period from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. But every day we have the lights on, whether it's sunny or not, and it makes sure to give that lettuce what it needs.
Mm-hmm. If I'm ever out that way, I'll definitely have to stop. And that'd be really cool to see this place, the setup you have.
And it's amazing technology. You really don't even need a greenhouse anymore to grow things hydroponically. You just need grow lights. You can do it right at your own home, right in your basement, wherever you can get set up. A lot of hydroponic operations today aren't even being set up in a greenhouse. They're being set up in train cars or vertical farming, they call it, where urban settings, they're building skyscrapers, and every level of this building is equipped with LED lights to grow leafy greens. So they're able to grow fresh leafy greens right in a city setting, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. My brother, he's kind of into kind of greenhouse stuff and just toying around with growing stuff. And he was into, like, called microgreens, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
And he was like showing me videos, and this guy is in like his basement. He had trays of these, and he goes through it and he like cuts them with scissors, and he sells them. He makes really good money doing
so
that.
Microgreens, you seed them, and literally days later, as they're germinating, when they have basically just 2 little baby leaves, is when you harvest them and you get them off to market. Very, very big industry today. But for us as an operation, we see the lettuce as more of a better route to go. We have roughly 60 days invested into a head of lettuce through the winter months. We're able to get that down to 45 days in the summer when there's more natural light. From the day we seed that lettuce plant to the day we ship it out the door, it's either 45 or 60 days. So the key to success with the hydroponic lettuce is that your turnover rate is so rapid that you're able to get so many crops through that greenhouse per week. So looking at it from a year standpoint, we're able to get 53 crops out of that greenhouse. So we're moving a lot of plant material.
Compared to if you were to be outside.
Out in the field, you're talking 1, 2, maybe 3 crops in that season.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, and then you have to deal with the elements and
Right.
pests and
Right. Where in the greenhouse, you're trying to create that perfect growing environment. And for the most part, we do. But there's, Mother Nature. She'll heat that greenhouse up real quick, and snowstorms come through. We got to worry about the structure and making sure everything's operating as it should.
everything's a challenge, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Always.
So something that's kind of, is there anything else you want in terms of hydroponics or anything for the greenhouses?
I think we've covered it there.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything you want to talk about?
No, it's just we were kind of talking earlier about how we both we did the abroad trip to New Zealand.
Yeah.
At separate times,
separate
but we
years.
both went to the same school when we were over there.
I vividly remember coming to you in AGR because I knew you had gone to New Zealand, and I definitely wanted your opinion on whether or not to go, and you obviously highly recommended it. So, I mean, Cornell gave us such a wonderful experience when it came to traveling. Whether it was CUDS, the dairy science program, I made sure to be involved in because even as a greenhouse operation, I wanted to be exposed to different ag operations, whether it be dairy or greenhouse or vegetable or vineyard, So it's nice to be exposed to everything, and Cornell certainly did that. So yeah, it came time to think about going abroad, and it was my fall semester junior year I went. And I was the only one to go at the time. So, pretty intimidating to head out for New Zealand alone. And, it takes 4 planes and 33 hours to get there. And, but what a trip.
Change in season.
17 hours ahead of your family time. And,
Yeah.
But absolutely amazing country. If I could uproot the farm and relocate it somewhere, it would 110% be the South Island of New Zealand. 4 million people to 40 million sheep, just sheep everywhere.
Everywhere. He's not even exaggerating. Literally everywhere. Doesn't matter where you drive.
And I made sure to take sheep classes while I was there, and I studied wine. Studied a lot of wine while I was down in New Zealand, and made a lot of great friends. So made sure to buy a car as soon as I got there, and traveled the country every weekend. Every weekend my friends and I were going somewhere different in the country, whether it be the South Island or the North Island. We put a ton of miles on that car in 5 short months. So very, very great experience. Mm-hmm.
What I always found so fascinating was the fact that, living in the U.S., going 3 hours would be basically from getting from my house to your house.
Yep.
In New York State, where you can go coast to coast in 3 hours, and you can go from beaches to foothills to mountains to foothills to plains. The geography is unreal.
You can literally go skiing and go to the beach in the same day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember, did you ski at all?
I did. Yep.
Did you go to, was it Mount Hutt? That's one I went to, I think.
It probably was. I can't even remember at this time, but.
What was cool about it was we were there, so we skied right at the end because it was June, so winter was just really kicking off when we left, and it was probably early June, and Tyler, Mark, and I, and Pierce, our other buddy, there's a picture where we're up in the mountains, and then down below is the Canterbury Plains, and it's just everything's green, and it's sunny, and it's like 20 degrees where we are. It's just cool. Then you go back down, and you take your clothes off, you get into shorts and t-shirt, and it's 65 degrees. It was really cool.
Yeah, but wonderful people, outgoing, just very, very nice people. So I would like to get back there someday, I hope, and tour the country again. Mm-hmm.
Did you make it up in the North Island much?
Yeah, I did. We put our car on the ferry and got up into the North Island. We went and toured Hobbiton, the movie set for The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and got all over. Different hostel every night, different B&Bs.
So easy to travel in that place.
Some good hostel experiences and some bad, but wouldn't trade it for anything. And yeah, so
yeah, and I don't even think I ever saw a greenhouse when I was over there. Was there any greenhouse stuff in New Zealand?
I saw very few. There were some there, but not many. Sheep seemed to be the main, and deer. They farmed a lot of deer, and vineyards. Lots of grapes over there. So saw a lot of great wineries, and I was able to get my folks over there for a week.
Did you?
Yeah, they don't travel much with the farm, but yeah, we were able to get them down in New Zealand for a week. So I toured them around and got to show them the entire South Island in 7 days. So spent the bulk of it in Queenstown and had a blast
place
down there. Skydiving, bungee jumping. It was that was the place to be.
Great night scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I call Queenstown the Vegas of New Zealand.
It's
anything
accurate.
goes. Yeah, it's just a party city. It doesn't matter what night of day of the week.
Great bar scene.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Something else I was gonna ask you. It'll come back to me, but
It'll come to you.
Yeah. No. Like I said, it'll come back to me eventually.
Yeah, just Cornell in general providing all the experiences to travel abroad, whether it was New Zealand or Germany. You were with me in Germany, or Easter Island. We were studying biodiversity and plants on Easter Island.
Yeah, you went on that trip.
Yeah.
What was that? I remember you going kind of vaguely. That was kind of a different trip, wasn't it?
Yeah, so 15 of us got to go to Easter Island, which is just off the coast of South America, off the coast of Chile, about 2,000 miles. So very, very remote island. And we went there to study biodiversity of plants because the island was basically devastated of all its plant material at one time. So at this point today, it's basically regrowing its plant material. So we went there to study it and see how it was doing. And that's where the Moai statues are that you iconically see all over. And very, very small island. One plane comes in, one plane leaves per day. And very different culture. A lot of fun bar scene. But yeah, we had a good experience down there.
How many people actually live on the island? Do you know?
I couldn't tell you now. It's been too long, but not many.
Is it basically just one like city?
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
And then it's
yeah, one city, and then your outskirts. You could basically go to the highest point of the island and do a 360 view of the ocean. So very small.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So the plane ride out, it said how many miles off?
2,000 miles off the coast of Chile. So
geez, so that's quite a plane.
Yeah, so
trip.
We flew from Buffalo down to Florida, and then Florida down to Chile, and then Chile over to Easter Island, and we did spend a day in Chile there, and so got to tour around there as well. Mm-hmm.
Did you like South? I guess you were only there a day or so. But did you like Chile? Would you go back down there?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was very nice. Very different culture, but nice to be exposed to. So.
The people who live on Easter Island, are they mostly like native South Americans?
Yes.
Or are they from all over the world?
No, native.
People are like,
native.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
absolutely.
a lot of researchers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I forgot you did that trip.
Yeah, it was a great trip.
You did a lot of traveling.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily, have a huge desire to travel when I got to Cornell, but they started providing so many opportunities to get out and travel. You just had to take advantage, and New Zealand especially. I mean, you just had to do it. So it was an unreal experience, really.
Especially when post-college, you go back to the farm, more likely than not, you won't have many opportunities to get away for the period that you're able to get away, maybe a week here or there, but
Right. To go to
take
New
advantage
Zealand
of
for basically at cost tuition, of college is a no brainer.
Yeah.
And yeah, with all of us being at our farms today, we don't have a ton of time to travel. So definitely good to take advantage while you can. Mm-hmm.
So do you do now when you're on the farm, do you get away much, or are you more or less tied down? Or?
Pretty well tied down. Our slowest time of year is that June mark when all the ornamental plants are out of the greenhouse. So my wife and I, Kayla, we love to go camping. So we do have a camping trip planned for this June up to the Adirondacks. So hopefully we can make that happen. But weekend trips are more than possible, and we can certainly get away if it's planned for. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what kind of other things do you like to do when you're not working on the farm?
Well, I'm a total gearhead. If it's got wheels and a motor, I love it, and I want to be involved with it. So classic cars are a huge hobby of mine. I have an old truck myself, and my dad has a Chevelle. So we're always tinkering with those, and I'm a huge motorcycle guy. I'm between Harleys right now. I love everything about Harley Davidson. I did have to sell off the Harley to help finance the kitchen remodel. But that's how things go. So hopefully there's another Harley coming down the line at some point. But yeah, I mean, my wife and I were in the middle of remodeling a farmhouse, and it's the original farmhouse on the property there. So it was built in the 1930s, and it was pretty well original when I got back to it. So we're doing a full remodel, and we're about halfway through it at this point. The entire downstairs is renovated. So
I've seen some. Did you do that yourself, or are you hired now? Or?
No, I had plenty of help from my brother-in-law, especially.
Okay.
He's a contractor, so he was helping me out a ton. Anything I could do, I would do it, but he was the main brains behind the operation.
I saw some of the pictures on Facebook. Really, really
Thank
nice.
You.
Yeah,
thank you.
Very.
Yeah, so it's coming along just fine. So, but it takes time. So, labor of love.
Yeah. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
It's work to do once it's all said and done. And by the time you're done, you can start back. That's what my parents, they went through, remodeled everything. It's like, well, once you're done, you can start back at the
first room. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh man. But yeah, so it's busy at home. We're having a good time.
Good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you got married and you're.
Yeah, Kay and I have been married for over a year now, and our little one, Kenny, she's almost 8 months now. We named her after my grandfather, Kenneth. Our farm is called Kenneth Henry Sons, and we named our daughter Kennedy. So we call her Kenny. So Kenny Henry's back on the farm, and it's busy. She's doing really well. She's cutting teeth and not sleeping very well, but she's a bundle of joy. You can't help but smile when you look at her. So we're crazy about her.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Congrats on all the wedding.
You.
I haven't, like I said,
I know,
I haven't seen you since any
time.
of that. And it's, if you see, if it's not on Facebook, you don't know about it, I guess, right?
That's right.
So, I guess if you weren't into farming,
ooh,
that's question's coming.
Yeah, I know this question.
It's coming. What do you think you'd be
I
doing?
would 110% be a gold miner up in the Yukon.
Are you into the show Gold Rush?
I do thoroughly enjoy the show Gold Rush. I would only consider it, first of all, if I wasn't in ag. Ag is what I want to do. It's what I love to do. But I do like that gold mining. You're basically responsible for your well-being, your future. What you put in is what you get out, and it would have to be a family operation as well, because I'm a family man. I got to be with the family. I wouldn't be able to, go up to the Yukon for 7 months away from the family and be away from them. So it would have to be a family operation up there. But yeah, there's something about moving dirt and washing rocks that is pretty fascinating. But yeah, so funny, but pretty cool. I enjoy it.
You like heavy equipment? working that stuff too.
Yeah, I grew up on heavy equipment, so it's very familiar, and it's just another fascinating industry to me, gold mining. So definitely an interest. Mm-hmm.
As long as you find something, right?
Go broke very fast.
Yeah, that's the one thing where it's like the amount of money you can sink into those. Mm-hmm. I guess, based on what I see on the show.
I know.
And it's like
it's so romanticized on the show, right? So
yeah, but still, it's like, man, you can dump millions into a plot, or and dig it all up and run it through your wash plant and get like nothing. So
right. You must watch a little bit of it then.
Yeah, I have. I don't have cable or anything, so I haven't watched in a while. But it was always on a room in EGR. There's usually a couple guys watch, so I would catch it here and there. I think Luke was into watching it usually, if I remember correctly. And I watch it. It is great entertainment.
I mean, as long as you're actively prospecting for, good gold, I think you can come out of it okay. But if you're just running dirt for the sake of running dirt, you might not come out on top.
Yeah, like you said, it gets almost romanticized, where it's like,
oh, very much so.
Yeah,
I'm sure
people do that with agriculture sometimes too. It's like, it is a business. It is gotta make something at the end of the day.
Agriculture is 110% what I want to be in. It's the most resilient group of people I've ever met in my life. They're so passionate about what they do, and bringing things to the table that it's just a great industry. So I'm happy to be a part, and look forward to what's to come.
Yeah. 4 generations too. That's impressive.
Yeah. And fifth is here, and hopefully more on the way. I want Kenny to have all the animals on the farm. So, we've got horses, and she's going to be getting her first duck this spring. So we'll take her out in search of her first duck and get her going.
Get them started young.
Yeah, and Kayla's making, a ton of sacrifices. She's a workaholic, and she's made a ton of sacrifices to stay home and to raise Kenny, and so she can be home on the farm and have a similar upbringing. So very appreciative for that.
Yeah. It's a good way to raise kids, I think.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Especially there's no better way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You learn a lot about life and hard work, which is
no doubt.
You can't teach that in school.
Nope. Nope. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, anything else you'd like to chat about?
Well, I think I've hit everything, unless you have anything you want to talk about.
I think we just about nailed it all. I think it was a lot of fun having you on, man.
I appreciate you having me here. I was looking forward to it and had a great time.
Yeah, and we'll do this again at some point down the road.
Sounds like a plan.
We'll do a 2.0. So
anyway, sounds good.
Jason, man,
thank you. Of course. No worries.
And thanks,
looking forward to the next episode.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And I'll catch you in the next episode.